Alright, this is going to be a semi-quick video just to explain on how to install the sensor on your hop-up. I'm using a G&G POS. I've already filed it and pre-drilled it just to make the video that much faster. You have your sensor. I've already added the length to the feeler that it needs. Already cut the wires and tinned them. Same thing on the opposite end. Installed trigger board. This is just a tester gearbox. This is not a actual usable gearbox. First thing you're going to want to do, you're going to take your hop up. You're going to put a barrel with a bucking. I don't know if I can get it at the proper angle. A barrel with a bucking. There we go. That will stop the BBs. And I've figured out that most M4 guns, or version 2 guns, the hop-up will house 5 BBs. Now where you want to place the sensor is on the third BB, or the middle BB. How you do that is you take your caliper, a caliper. This is just a cheap POS, old, very old school caliper, and I like it because it has this part that helps with depth measuring. And you just measure 2 1/4 BBs. It should be like 15.5 millimeters, I believe. And then that will show you where you need to drill your hole. By the time you mark your hole and you drill it dead center, it'll move it that other 1/4 of a BB, which is roughly 1.5 millimeters. Doesn't have to be exact. Doesn't have to be a specific size hole. It just has to be big enough to where the sensor itself won't fit through it. When you glue it on, you drop your BBs in there. You don't have to put all 5 in it after you drill the hole. I do all 5. That way I can hold it stationary. Look at the sensor. Make sure that the feeler is activated. Sorry, my camera's like auto-focusing for some reason. Stop it. Which again, I've already pre-done all this stuff. One thing you're going to have to do on most hop-ups, this material is very thick. Doesn't look like it is from this, but it's machined down quite a bit, as you can see from the outside to there. And if you look, if I can get the camera to focus on it, I don't know if you can see the thickness of the hop-up of the wall, but it's quite thick. So I file it down. Again, I don't know if you can see it, but that just helps with the feeler actually getting good contact with the BB and not having to trim this as much. Next thing you're going to want to make sure you do is, this is nice and scratched up, good and rough, that way you have something for it to bond to. Now you're going to put a small dab of super glue on the micro switch or on the hop up. One thing I forgot to mention in my last video is make sure whatever you do not get super glue on this feeler, because it will stop the actuation of it and it will make it so it stays in the closed position all the time and it doesn't work. So what I do, and I'm going to go ahead and do it just because I have it all set up already, is I take a little bit of super glue and I just put it on surface, just a drop. You can use a piece of paper or whatever you want. A screwdriver that came from Wolverine, because I have many of them. Just get a dab. And I put it on the sensor. Now if you think you have too much, you can always push it off. If you don't have enough, you can always add some. It's super glue. Everybody has it in their house, everywhere they go. Whenever you mount the switch, you want to make sure that the feeler does not contact the exterior wall, or else, again, that will change the performance. And you're just going to wait. While we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and say that if you're not comfortable drilling a hole in your hop-up, then you should have somebody with mechanical knowledge who is comfortable doing something like that, especially if you're using a Pro-Win hop-up, because the Pro-Win requires a lot. Now again, I did this with a Dremel in my garage, but you can see the amount of material that I had to remove off of the hop-up to get the feeler to where it would work properly. So if you're not comfortable drilling a $35 hop-up or $25 or whatever these go for now hop-up, then start with something basic. I did the G&G just because they're cheap and I needed to do this video. Now, as you can see, secure. You're going to take your shrink wrap, or with the testers I sent out tape. I'm going to do away with that and I'm going to use a wrap with the wires sticking out the top. And just set it over top. You're going to look down in there, make sure the feeler is protruding, wipe off your screwdriver, make sure it actuates like it should, which it does. Then you're going to take your shrink tape, or shrink wrap. I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera, that way it doesn't mess with the focus. Now it's permanent. What the shrink wrap does is it helps with the wires not getting pulled. I used a lighter. I don't really suggest that, but go ahead and pull the barrel off because I don't need that anymore. You're going to take your wires, wrap them around the front, and they're going to come out the back. Now that is that length for a reason. So bear with me here. You're basically done with your hop-up. At that point, it's done. It's installed. You don't have to worry about it. If you're really worried about the sensor coming loose, I mean, I'm doing the shrink wrap just because an extra insurance thing. I have these in about 10 guns, and I haven't had one come loose with just super glue yet. But just for insurance purposes, I went ahead and the little tape, that way it doesn't come loose. And also wrapping the wires around the front of the hop-up makes it so that if you do pull your upper off without disconnecting, when you do, it'll just unplug on its own. So you don't have to worry about ripping the wires loose at all. And whenever you put it back on, just simply plug it back in. We're going to go ahead and set that off to the side. We're going to move this forward here. Now, I have a Generation 2 Wolverine wiring harness sitting here. Version 2, Gen 1, Gen 2. Generation 1 uses a different trigger board. But regardless of which generation you have, the brown wire, which you can see I have cut here, is the wire that you're going to want to cut. That is the wire that signals the FCU that the trigger has been pressed and to fire the solenoid. With Polar Stars, I have a tester working on a Polar Star right now. It should work the exact same, but I can't give a guarantee on that yet until I get a word back from him. Now these two wires are going to go to these two wires. Doesn't matter which way, it just matters that they're connected and they're connected good. Go ahead and put a little shrink wrap on there. Same thing with this side. Now the wires have already been tinned, but just for added security, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more. Now the connection has been made. It is permanent. Again, get a heat gun. Don't you do it with a lighter. I'm too cheap. And then you're going to take your piece of shrink wrap that comes with it. Now I cut these wires a little far back on the harness. I wouldn't suggest doing it that far back, but it doesn't really matter. Where as long as you have enough length in this harness, it'll be fine. Just not as pretty inside the gearbox as some would like. Again, buy a heat gun, use a heat gun, use your mom's hair dryer, whatever. I did this just because I'm weird and I don't like wires just hanging out, even though I'm gonna have wires just hanging out. This kind of helps with the mess a little bit. You don't have to do that, but I have extra shrink wrap, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our gearbox. We're going to grab us an SMP. We're going to set it in here and we're going to test it. Now this is not a permanent gearbox, as I said. Now, the reason that this wire is the length that it is because whenever this is hooked up here, your connector, which I super glued down on mine, fits in that small cavity and doesn't interfere with the mag, with most mags. If you're concerned about that and you want a different length harness, that's not a big deal. I'm going to make a universal harness which has super long wires on both sides. That way people who are concerned about that don't have to actually worry about that. You just set the wires there, tuck them up the side of the gearbox, pull them into the gearbox, doesn't matter. That is completely up to you. FCU. Plug it in. I think I have a trigger laying here somewhere. Here we go. Will not fire. It's Allen key. I picked this Allen key because it wobbles on the inside. Pull the Allen key out. Nothing. Go ahead and put a barrel on it real quick. So that I can show that it's not a metal contacting. Equation. And that's 5 BBs. There we go. Go ahead and pour them out of there. Whenever the gun's firing, obviously it'll clear these by itself. There you go. Doesn't have to be a G&G hop-up. It doesn't have to be a Pro-In hop-up. It doesn't have to be a Madball hop-up. This one I literally used a actually this pair of scissors to just gouge at it and to test. If you are going to do a Pro-In, keep in mind, no, I'm not going to do exact measurements. Let's try and pay attention. It's about 6 points. Not exactly. Yeah, this thing's way off. But you can see how much material I had to remove off of it at the bottom. It's quite a bit. So you have to make sure that if you're going to do it, you don't mind drilling on a expensive pop-up. The hole size does not have to be specific. I use a large drill bit just so that I can move the sensor around. If you have any questions, go ahead and send me a message and I'll try and answer them as quick as possible.